Welcome to the Big Stud Sales Podcast, where I want to help you nail construction selling. I'm your host, Mike Claudio, owner of WinRate Consulting, a construction, sales, consulting, and coaching company focused on the remodeling industry. This podcast will help you take the guesswork out of how to be successful selling to homeowners, making you a stud at identifying who your market is, where to find them, how to qualify them, and what to do to close the deal. Connect with me on Instagram at WinRate Consulting or email me, mike@bigstudsales.com.
What's up, studs? If you're listening, you either are or want to be a stud at selling in the construction industry, and Ryan and I hope to help you do that. Today, we're going to talk about reverse engineering your 2020 goals. I recently sat down with a sales professional in the industry and helped her identify what she was trying to accomplish next year and how to break that down into daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and yearly goals so that you can progress through the year understanding, am I on target? Am I doing what I want to do? And then being able to analyze and adjust based on the results you're seeing.
Yeah, I absolutely love reverse engineering. I reverse engineer literally everything that I do. So I guess the simple explanation of what is it, it's kind of working with the end in mind. So first you say what the end result is that you want, and then working backwards to figure out the pathway that you need to take to get to that end goal.
So I'm going to walk you through the exact example that I went through, and I'll let you cue in as you feel to, Ryan.
Okay.
Awesome. All right. So this specific individual has a target of making $150,000 next year.
As a business
as a person. This is a salesperson within an So
Gotcha. Okay.
she works for a company, but it's the same process that I'm about to walk her entire company through.
Gotcha.
But so her target is $150,000 in income. She makes a $55,000 base, which means she needs to make $95,000 in commission.
Right.
And so the first step we did was understand year to date this year, how much had she made on how many sales, so we could understand what her commission rate was. Mm-hmm. In her industry, in her position, she's able to fluctuate a little bit on sale price of her product to help meet the client's goals within a range. So her commission does fluctuate a little bit, but I want to understand what it was for the year.
General percentage.
General percentage. So in her case, her general percentage was 7.5% commission rate.
I hope she's a really good salesperson.
So so year to date this year, she's been in her role for not the entire year. She's done about $500,000 in revenue. So times 7.5%, you can do the math there. So we were understanding, okay, so if that's the case, we know about how much money you need to sell next year in revenue. And in her case was $1.26 million in 2020. That's how much revenue she'd have to produce if she was able to sustain a 7.5% commission rate to get to her $95,000 in commission. So what does that look like from an average project perspective? So we looked at about how many projects she sold this year, which was about 66 to get to about 500,000. So we equated to her average project is $7,300. So that's the next step. If you know that, okay, I need to do $1 million in revenue next year.
How many projects do I need to sell?
How many projects do you need to sell?
What my average is.
Right. So you need to figure out what your average project size is. And this works the same for a business as it does for an individual salesperson trying to make money. So for her to reach $1.26 million, she has to sell 174 projects next year.
And then you divide that by 12 and say about how many a month do you need to sell?
14 and a half per month, which is 3.5 closed per week. So the next step was,
how many leads did she need to get?
So this year, what was her average win rate or close rate or success rate, however you want to look at it, right? So we looked at, okay, for her to close 66 projects, she quoted about 105 this year. So that's the sample cycle. If you're a business,
She's about 60%.
About 60%. So to get to 174 closed deals, she has to quote
about 400?
290.
Or 300. Yeah, I was thinking about 300.
Yeah, so 290 projects, how many she has to bid in order to close 174 at $7,300 a piece. That's one
a day without weekends almost.
So we're saying if you're going to work about 200 days a year, right, 5 days a week, 52 weeks, about taking 2 weeks off for vacation, you're 250 working days a year. So we base it on 200 because she likes to travel a lot. That's 1.5 projects bid every working day. So now she can look at it and say, how many projects have I bid this week? Oh, that wasn't enough. I got to do better next week.
I need to bid 7 to 8 every single week.
Every single week. 7 to 10. All right, so this works the same way if you're a business. It could be, how much revenue do I want to make? How much profit margin do I want to get? What type of clients? What type of employees? These are all things that you can set up, but that's the process to reverse engineer it.
I do the same thing for every marketing. Every marketing strategy.
We do it.
Yeah, we do it all the time.
But people listening don't.
Right.
And if you do, I apologize. I'm singling you out, but most people don't reverse engineer goals. They reverse it. They proactively say, I'm going to do this much business, but then they don't have any way of tracking it or knowing are they on path.
And what I like about reverse engineering is you can get it so small and say, I need to close, or I need to quote 7 to 10 per week. But that gives you a very small, reasonable goal. You're not looking at, I'm trying to make $150,000. No, I'm just trying to get 7 to 10 proposals out the door every week. So now I can get micro goals and say, how can I do 7 to 10 proposals a week? What do I need to do? Okay, now daily. That means I need to do 1 to 2 a day. What do I need to do every single day to get 1 to 2 proposals out the door? It's much easier to think about that 1 to 2 per day than thinking about, I've got to sell 170 deals this year.
174. So you're right. It does two things for you from a mindset perspective. It allows you to work every day to an achievable goal, but it also allows you to say, okay, I did my job today. Because a lot of business owners just work until they burn out, they're miserable, they're tired, they're done. But if you don't know how much effort you need to put in daily, weekly, or monthly, you're going to wake up, it's going to be April 2020, and you're like, how the fuck did I get here? And where am I? Am I going to hit my goals this year? I don't know. What are my goals this year? I don't remember. Because you don't have a strategic plan. I am absolutely passionate about managing to activity level, not results. Because I know you can't hit your yearly goal in a week.
Right.
You can't hit your yearly goal in a month. You can't hit your yearly goal in a quarter. So it doesn't matter what your results are that quarter. It matters what your activity level is, because you can close business in the busiest part of the year without trying real hard. But that doesn't average out for the whole year. And yeah, you might have a really busy quarter or a really busy 2 quarters, but that's only half the fucking year. And if you're not doing the activities during the other quarters where it's not as easy or it's not as busy, you're going to fail.
And this reverse engineering like this also allows you to look into your numbers a little bit more and say, okay, that's a lot of quotes. Well, what if I was able to find higher paying jobs?
Exactly.
And so now let's reverse engineer the same exact thing. If I wanted to make $150,000 a year, but I was able to increase my average job to $10,000. And so now I only need to sell 100. And now if I'm only selling 100, I only need to get 1 proposal out the door a day, only 5 per week. And so you can start reverse engineering and say, if I'm here, this is what I will get. If I want to improve these certain things, this is what I can get. So, maybe she's leaving a lot on the table and can actually increase her project size because she wasn't doing a couple add-ins, which is a very high profit margin for her commission. We don't know, but that allows her to look at it and say, look, 174 deals is not feasible. That can't happen. So what are some other things that I can work in here to increase these numbers to make sure that my 150 number is reasonable?
Well, and then vice versa, you can say, well, if I want an average project size of $75,000 and you got labor sitting around with nothing to do, but you have a significantly higher success rate with $30,000 projects, that's the business decision. If we're going
to we just talked about rebranding on probably the previous episode. This is why I rebranded, because I narrowed down my specific projects that I can do based on what the need is. So I had some projects that I never sold and I wanted to. And if I did sell them, I would only be able to have 3 or 4 clients. But the projects that people were seeking out at the price point made sense. So my employees were working. People were getting a massive value, and I can have a higher volume so I can stay consistent. And so I know exactly how many clients I need versus quoted versus sold.
And especially in the construction industry where labor force is such a challenging issue, you might not be able to accomplish more projects in a year. So you have to find ways to value add and increase your average project size. Because if you reverse engineer, I want to do $3 million next year, and you realize that you have a $30,000 project average, that's 100 projects.
Yeah. I did this in the
and
gym.
I'll tell you right now, guys, $130,000 projects is a shit ton of moving parts.
I did this in the gym all the time because there was only so much of a capacity you could have within your class.
Yeah.
So it's like, I want to make more money. Well, you either need to have more classes, you need to raise prices, or you need to figure out how you can have alternative ways to increase your revenue, because you can't make the space bigger. You can't make people fit in a space that doesn't make it efficient. Or I would have to hire more people to watch a class of 50. Like, you can't have that. So you've got to be able to reverse engineer that so you can really look into your processes and say, if I want to make more money, here's the 4 or 5 things that I could do. What's the most feasible based on my business model?
Well, and a lot of times too, guys, it's not just revenue, it's profit.
Yeah,
Right.
That's a better way. I hate the word revenue because I don't care how much money you make. It's how much money do you profit at the end of the year.
Right. So, but you might realize that you're looking at your books from the last year or two, and you realize, like, man, projects over 200,000 with additions, we just don't execute very profitably. Well, if we're going to cut those out, how are you going to hit your revenue targets?
Yeah.
It's how you create the plan so you can actually go out and execute step by step, day by day, because you cannot accomplish a 12-month plan in one day. So what is your target that day? How do you know what you're supposed to be doing?
So let's give people action that they can do. So step 1 to reverse engineer this. First thing you need to do is write down the goal that you would like to accomplish by the end of 2020.
I would highly suggest starting with, how much money do you want to take home?
Yes. And so based on that, you're going to say, what is my current profit margin?
Correct.
And so with that profit margin, you're going to say, this is how much I need to do in revenue, how much I need to sell. And so then based on produce.
Sell and produce are not the same thing.
Okay.
At least in the construction industry, because like you might sell something in November that might not happen until March. So
this is how many accounts receivable I need to have in 2020.
I just want to make sure that we're saying the same thing.
No, you're good.
Yeah.
So now that you know, I need to have this much produced.
I need to collect this amount of money.
Collect this amount of money. Yep. And at my current profit margin, this is how much money I would bring home. Awesome. Now let's start working backwards. How many projects do you need to do based on your average project size?
And you could do it by project size too, right? Like you could say, well, we're going to do 10 $100,000 projects, 50, $20,000 projects.
That's how I do mine. So I say, I know I want to work with 4 of these clients. I know I want to work with 10 of these clients, and I want to work with 20 of these clients.
I mean, I've done it for next year. I know how many one-on-one coaching clients I want. I know how many online courses I want to sell, and I know how many speaking engagements I want.
Right.
Because I know my numbers, and then I know how hard I need to work to do that.
Right. And you know which one's the most profitable, and you know, like, if I really wanted to, I could get rid of 1 or 2 of these ones, and I could replace it with 4 or 5 of these ones because the numbers still all make sense. And so we've just got to understand that when you're talking about your business and you have specific goals and you set your goals first so you can reverse engineer and work backwards, it will allow you to create a roadmap for success so you can reach those goals, and you'll know exactly what you need to do to get there.
And then I highly, highly suggest you have some sort of tracking system to do this, because that's the biggest miss, right? Like, you can do all the planning in the world, and I highly suggest you do, and a lot of people miss that step. But if you take this step to actually create and reverse engineer the action plan, there's got to be a trackability and accountability process for it, whether you're a one-man show or you have 10 salespeople.
So I think we've done it. We've done a podcast, or we've done a video. I know you've said this before. Let's talk about real quick. We've got a couple minutes here. What are some of these things that everyone should be tracking, and how should they be tracking them? So
everything we just talked about, to reverse engineer that, you need to understand your success rate.
Close rate.
Close rate. You need to understand your profit margin. Mm-hmm. You need to understand what your average project size is.
And so let's define these as we go. So profit margin, how much money you're paid, but how much money you actually make.
Right. So it's revenue
minus expenses.
Expenses and overhead.
Yep.
That's profit.
Yep.
Average close rate. How many projects did you quote to how many projects did you close?
Right.
Right. So that's the differential there. What your average project size? Revenue divided by completed projects.
Yep.
From there, now you can say, okay, for us to continue, if we continue at these rates,
and so
how many do we need to do per day?
Tracking wise, you also need to know per day how many calls you have coming in or leads, how many contact information are you getting, How many quotes are you sending out weekly, daily, monthly? And so you can start keeping the spreadsheet and start saying, and there's plenty of other tools, but spreadsheet's a great way to start.
Yep.
But, you see how many leads that came in. Of those leads, how many closed? Of those that closed, what was their price of the quoted project? Now, based on that, let's do a division of the leads versus sold clients. And then let's start running all those numbers. And so every single month you can start having some sort of pattern, because you'll start seeing that, oh, I thought February was our busiest month, and turns out June we actually get all of our leads in. Well, maybe I should start trying to think about doing some marketing either when I'm slow and offering an incentive. And in June, maybe I need to make sure that I have a couple part-time people ready to be able to take on some of these other clients.
Yeah, and then manage cash flow, right?
That's it.
That's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
But if you understand year over year when your busiest months are and your slowest months are, if you're not tracking it, you're not going to know. You're going to just go kind of blindfold into the year, into the quarter, into the month, and hope the money's in the bank account at the end to pay the bills. And that's just an exhausting way to run a business. There's no preparedness. There's no planning. There's no proactiveness. And you wake up every morning unsure what to do next.
Yep.
If that's how you're operating right now, please re-listen to this episode and implement part of it, because your life sucks right now because you are exhausted, you're anxious, you're unsure, you're frustrated, and everybody in your life suffers when you feel that way.
So what I like doing kind of to end this thing, make sure you go sit down for an hour by yourself, write down a perfect scenario. So write down your actual goals, and then write on the low end, what happens if I, only achieve 70% of this? What is all the numbers that need to match up? And then same thing, what if I achieve 30% more? What do those numbers look like? That way, have a low, a medium, and a high. So if you can hit that medium, you're hitting your goals. Anything over that is awesome. You don't want to hit the low, but you know what the minimum is that you need to do to get some of those. Or you run the numbers off of what you currently did this year. So that way, if I want to just stay stagnant, this is what I got to do again next year. Here's some areas I can improve. Here's what my goal is. Here's what I need to do. What if I added XYZ? Here's what that would look like. So now you have a whole mapped plan out for 2020 or whatever year you're listening this to, that you can say, this is what my business could and would look like if I did XYZ.
That's it.
That's it.
Just do it.
Do it. That's the end of every episode. Just do it.
Just do it.
We're Nike now.
No. Win fast and win often.
Thank you for listening. My goal is to take the guesswork out of how to properly sell within the construction industry. Once you nail this part of the process and get your sales and business development clicking, it makes everything about the job that much easier. If you have any specific scenarios or questions you want answered, shoot me an email, mike@bigstudsales.com, and follow me on Instagram at WinRate Consulting. Remember, win fast and win often.